Good evening, and welcome to Soluble, America's Political Central. We thank you for joining us on this day, April the 3rd, in the year of our Lord, 2023. And tonight's topic of discussion is going to be the Saturdays that we are now seeing in politics. And this is not, Saturdays as it relates to the weekend, the day of the weekend that we all let our hair down and do the things that working people do after a long hard day. But these are just Saturdays, the opposite of happy. And you would think that as Democrats, we would use this embarrassment, this just unprecedented act that the DA is doing in New York, on behalf of a former president. It would be a time to, lick our chops, cheer, use it as bait, for the base, to gin up the base, to sign up new Democratic voters. But, any red blooded, sensible American who knows what democracy is all about and what's at stake here can really understand why this is a Saturday in politics. Now, January 6th, 2021 was a sad day. And, one would have thought that after that day of such a violation of law and order, that, that would be the end of it. We would go on with an impeachment and the country would move forward. But here we are, nevertheless, with the former president, very much, if we allow him to, as focused Democrats, if we allow him to, controlling the narrative, controlling the airwaves. And, it begs the question that, if a president loves their country so much, or when a president loves their country, it's not demonstrated in this way. And this is what makes it, a sad day in politics. It's a sad day for democracy, that for the first time in the history of the republic, we have a former leader, not just any run-of-the-mill politician, senator, congressman, mayor, whatever. We're talking about the highest office in the land here. We're talking about the leader of the free world, what America stands for. And so, for the first time in the history of the republic, here we are with a former president facing indictment. And, based on what I was sent to school by my parents to learn, and, what one was taught that was expected of himself if he ever wanted to be president or run for the higher office in the land, it didn't look nothing like this. The things that I learned in school, in institutions of higher learning, on what it took to be president, it looked nothing like this. It looked nothing like this. And so, it's just, if you will, icing on the cake, to be just that, a Saturday in politics for democracy around the world. Countries are looking at America as, truly indeed the leader of the free world, a beacon of light for mankind, if you will, when it comes to democracy. And, the exercise of it is pretty much that. You have this freedom of speech, freedom of the press, separation of church and state, all the rights that should be granted to human individuals, to live a happy life and select leaders who they want to be governed by. But before we get into too much more deeper into the Saturdays we have here in politics, we're going to look at legislation that's been put out there, and keep you in the loop of actually what's going on day to day. Now, we know we just swore in a new Congress here, the first of the year in January. We went through a circus of selecting a Speaker of the House. You know, the Republicans finally got it together there. And, you know, thus far, what's come out of a House majority controlled by Republicans, um, is, and it's still early in the game. It's still early. So we're going to give the Republicans the benefit of the doubt. But thus far, with a new Congress, what's come out is the DC crime bill where they overrode the local legislation as far as crime, a crime bill or what have you. They got that, they pushed that through. And then they had this law requiring the declassification of the origins of the COVID-19 virus. And this is where we are. Um, is it meaningful legislation? I guess you could say so. Some with with COVID, um, people are CIA officials or what have you. I'm pretty sure they're working on to try to pin it down, to try to pin down the origins. But what about foreign policy? What about keeping prices low, keeping productivity, good paying jobs? What about those things? Um, and that's not to say that this law requiring the declassification of the COVID-19 virus, that's not to say that that's not important. That's not to say that it's irrelevant now. We're past the pandemic. We should want to know the exact origin. That's one of the ways that America has always went about trying to make sure that it never happens again. We lost a lot of Americans. It really hurt the economy, and it was just a bad time, not just for the country but for worldwide. So we're not gonna discredit that. But show me what you got. Is that all you got? Is that the best shot? And so, once again, it sounds cliche, but we go back to the vote because it's a pivotal time in the country. We're coming up to an election year, and right now we have to contend with the fact that the former president is the leading candidate up to be in contention for the presidency of the United States of America. And we have to do everything in our power. Those of us citizens who know what the right side of history looks like. Because we're in uncharted waters here now, with this former president and where he took the country. So going into the election year, we have to look at it for what it is until things change right now in this current moment. On this April the 3rd, in the year of our Lord 2023, right now in this moment, the former president is the leading candidate to be the next Republican up for the nomination to be president of the United States of America from the Republican Party. So it is what it is. We have them in the majority, and we have to do what it takes to keep them there. No fear. And as I've said before on the previous podcast, we have to play the long game here, because this is where American politics can wear you down, make you throw up your hands in disgust, give up, walk away. And so as American loving Democrats, we have to charge forward, a stated course more than ever, doing what it takes to keep the party, the Democratic Party that is, in the majority, controlling the levels of power in the country. What have we got? What have we gotten from the other side? And that's what I just stressed. Blocking the DC crime bill, overriding the local officials in DC, and putting out their own version of some kind of a crime bill there, and laws requiring the declassification of the origins of COVID. Now, we have, the debt ceiling coming up, where there's going to have to be a vote or something passed to, pay America's bills. Voter beware. Voter beware of any shenanigans. But, back to further my point, what are we getting here? What you see is what you get. Now that's the saying that I've heard forever and a day. What you see is what you get. So what do you see? What do you see, America? You see a former president who is still the leader of the party, who has a stranglehold on the party, if you will. And they love America so much from their point of view. And this is what they want you to believe. They love America so much that they're willing to go through all extremes, even breaking the law, even rewriting the Constitution, a document that's already, what we should be looking at as etched in stone. Why move the goalposts now? Why change the rules now? So, the handwriting is on the wall. What are you getting here? What are you getting? Besides sad days in politics, heading into Saturdays, which is where we're at now. Because, you have foreign countries, they're looking and they're cheering for Trump because they know that Trump can be a leading instrument in America's downfall. Now, if you think back and you harken back to other great nations, the vast majority of them were destroyed from within. They were destroyed from within. So, you have countries like China, Russia. They're rooting for Trump because they know that America's weaker under the former president's leadership. Just look at the last administration, full of actors. So, the president is being indicted tomorrow. He's turning himself into the DA to go in for mug shots and fingerprints and what have you. And, it's something that's never happened in the 240-something odd years of the Republic. This is a first. This is a first. Now, in these Saturdays in political times, who didn't see this coming? Namely, when it comes to the Republican Party and Republican politicians. Did you not see this coming in 2016? The president was unhinged. He would go after anybody who disagreed with him. And that's conduct that's, very unbecoming of a leader of the United States who respects freedom of speech. You may not give the best answer, but you respect freedom of speech. You don't try to intimidate people, tweet them into silence, belittle them, embarrass them into silence. But nevertheless, here we are in these Saturdays of politics. Now, the Democrats have, they've had to do what they had to do. Of course, you hear the Republicans saying this is politically based, this is politically driven, and this is not a tit for tat thing, because here at Soluble, as we always say, and we stand on it, we're looking this off here. We're looking this off. But there's a lot of hypocrisy going around here that has to be exposed for us to be able to look at the big picture here. When we hear the Republicans say, this is politically motivated, this is all based on politics. Well, and as I said, not being a tit for a tat, but what are we supposed to think about an investigation into Hunter Biden? Digging. There's nothing there. How deep will the Republicans dig? To create something, looking for something, dirt on an opponent. Is that not politically based? But as I said here at Soluble, in order to solve, in a sincere attempt to solve, to solve and get politicians to working across the aisle, it wouldn't benefit the American people for us to promote a tit for a tat here. But it has to be exposed. The hypocrisy here, it has to be exposed. Now, coming out of the primaries, when it was primary season in 2016, you would have to think that in some of these college-educated Republican politicians' minds, that the thought would have floated somewhere in the back, in the middle, the front, or wherever, that with this guy running, maybe it will one day lead to charges that we've never seen, befall an American president, whether sitting in office or former. The thought it should have. I mean, the president came out, a loose cannon, unhinged. And as a result, we see what we see now. The Saturdays in politics where I'm pretty sure, we'll have to do research and fact check it. But I'm quite sure that we've never had a president that's had to be surrounded by this many attorneys for this many things. And so, here we are. No time to cheer. This is to my fellow Democrats. This is no time to cheer. This is no time to revel in what we may see as an easy win for going into 2024. This is a sad day. This American democracy has really taken a hit here. It has really taken a hit. Because presidents, usually by standard, by code of conduct, they do everything to respect the Oval Office. They do things with a thought of love for one's country. Have some wavered, have some, did things or said things that they regret, of course. But what have we seen on this level? Before the former president, what have we seen on this level? Scandal after scandal, lawsuit, court cases. Total unrest in the country created by the former president. As I said, make no mistake about it. The former president created two things in America in his short 4 years. He created a level of domestic terrorism that we haven't seen, in over 100 years. And he created what, his fellow Republicans like to demonize as the woke mob. And we, our position here at Soluble is that woke is good. Woke is a lot better than sleep. But these are two things that the president, through his inability or undesire to unite the country after the election. And this is the result. This is the result. Now, while we as a country are focused on indictment, what's going to be the outcome? Who's going to file charges next? Whether it's going to be, election violations in Atlanta, whether it's going to be E. Jean Carroll, whether it's going to be the Department of Justice, when it comes to the classified documents. What other meaningful legislation can we bring to the floor? Is this the essence of the people's business? The people of this republic. We send, our leaders up to Washington, D.C. to get things done for us. So is this the sum of all the parts? Now, of course, we have to keep Republicans in the minority for this reason. Or what can they give us? What can they give us in black and white on paper? What can they bring to the floor? Meaningful legislation. But we're dealing with this distraction. And, it shouldn't be politics as usual, but it's going to be up to you Joe Public voter to make it not be the politics of usual. This is the great spin game by the Republican Party meant to confuse you, meant to, make you where you're not sure if you're voting for the right thing or you're doing the right thing, for yourself, your family, your country. And they revel in it. They revel in it. But here at Soluble, our goal is to bring you the facts. And that is, legislation that has been passed, brought to the floor for a vote, passing the law or what have you, by a newly controlled Republican House. DC crime bill, uh, law requiring the declassification of the origins of the COVID-19. And it's still early. As I said, this new majority just got sworn in January. But this is what helps to make it the more Saturdays in politics. Now, to my fellow Democrats, if you're paying attention, this goes away, when we're great at playing the long game. For example, even though next year is just that, the next year on the calendar, it's a long time before we actually go and vote again. So that's part of the long game, So don't be distracted. Don't become apathetic. Don't forget, because believe it or not, democracy is at stake here. Democracy is at stake. We're here mainly. Our position here at Soluble is that we're here, dragging through, trudging through these Saturdays in politics because the Republican Party, who is responsible for the nominee, he's there with their support. He's there with their lobbying, their campaigning. They're responsible for him. And they do nothing. They do nothing. Simply because the former president had an R by his name as far as political affiliation. So, beware of the fake outrage. Because the truth be told, the soluble truth, this could have been solved a long time ago. Simply with the Republican Party, doing the right thing. Especially after January the 6th. Especially after January the 6th. So, voter beware. Voter beware. While the Republican Party is outraged, they should be. But it shouldn't be directed wholeheartedly or wholly towards Democrats because they're responsible for this one reckless former president who ascended from the campaign trail to the Oval Office. He's their responsibility. Make no mistake about it. So, voter beware. I can't say it enough. Voter beware. Republican Party, Republican voters, is this what you voted for? We welcome different opinion here on Soluble, an opinion from an opposing point of view, an opinion from the right. I mean, our position here and our heart's desire in order to solve, because that's, the sole purpose of us coming into being is to try to solve. There was a time when politicians worked across the aisles. Compromise is what they called it. Now you have a party that, is having difficulty getting their voting numbers up. Make no mistake about it. Because of a change in demographics. So what will they do to win? Will they lie? Will they cheat, steal, kill? We've seen it. We've seen Capitol police officers under attack, killed. We've seen the lying, the cheating. You got Republican posters letting people into, the voting precinct buildings and going into areas of the buildings that they shouldn't be in. We have Republican voters who are voting their dead spouse wishes, or voting twice, or trying to pull off any shenanigans to win. So, beware of a party that screams loudly about voter fraud. And we let's make sure that it's not the fox guarding the hen house here when they're screaming all these accusations. Could this be a case where you have the Republican Party saying we're trying our best to do it, so I know they have to be doing it too, without any proof, without any evidence? The Dominion voting machines cases are before the courts now. They're before the courts. And the courts are going to look at evidence on both sides to determine whether the machines were accurate or inaccurate, whether they were rigged or not. Pay attention, because if you're just listening to Republicans on the podium, they're going to tell you that the elections were not fair and square. They were not on the level. And nothing could be further than the truth. But these are the Saturdays in politics that we're in, because they're having trouble getting their numbers up. They're having trouble getting their numbers up. I mean, we have to, realize, lest we forget, the former president didn't win the popular vote. And so there was a lot of confusion. There was a lot of anger there. As to how can he be president of the United States and not win the popular vote? Excuse me. And the Electoral College, that's another subject for another day. But there was no majority there. But yet he was our president. And as Americans, we're going to root. Opposition here, sorry, but we're going to root for, the Republican president on behalf of America. We're going to do that. And so that's what we did, reluctantly, begrudgingly, because the former president didn't win the popular vote. We closed ranks. We closed ranks around him. And, we saw what we saw. We began to see hate groups come out of the woodworks. The president with somewhat support for said hate groups, only rallies, with his base. No desire to bring all of America together. And so here we are. We could stay stuck in the rut, because there's no, the Republicans seem to feel like, they have no need for redemption towards the country. Here we had a flawed candidate who actually made it into the Oval Office. And we see the train wreck that it became. We started to lose standing. We started losing respect that other countries around the world had for us. We started to lose all of that. And, the former president's fellow Republicans didn't waver. In the beginning, they didn't waver. And, when they could have done something about it with the bribery. With the bribery that, the president tried to strike up a deal with President Zelensky. A golden opportunity to hold the president's feet to the fire and hold him responsible for his actions. But they didn't. So this is what we have. No one's above the law. No one's above the law. And for love of one's country, as a president of the United States, we've never seen this before. We didn't think that we would see it in our lifetime. This starts to look like something out of the second coming of the Third Reich. That's what it starts to look like. And, Americans have a right to be angry, have a right to be pissed. But what the best we can do is suck it up and, go through it. Get it over with. But we're going to have to keep those majorities in place. Let the Republicans, let them stew in it. Let Republican politicians stew in it. But, best believe the Democrats, the vote has been had. The votes have been cast. And the American people have leaned towards the Democratic Party to lead us into the next 4 years. Now remaining maybe 1.5, 2 years. And we'll see what happens after 2024. But we've been given a majority for a reason. So now we have to exercise our power with no apologies, unapologetically. We have to exercise, we have to push forward the agenda that the majority sent to Washington, D.C. to do. And if part of that is, holding the highest office in the land or the holder of the highest office in the land accountable, and no one's above the law, then that's what they have to do. The Democrats are forced to act on behalf of what's best for America. They're forced to act. And what makes it a sadder day is that we wouldn't even be dealing with this if the Republican Party would grow a spine. I mean, to be fair and honest with them, I don't think they know how they got into this. When they start to look back, it could be a head scratcher. They say, how in the heck did we let, this man come into the party and set the country back and set us even further back as a party? How did this happen? Because we're human. And to err is human. So, I'm pretty sure that they can look at this, but by now it shouldn't be a head scratcher. It should be to the point now where, it is what it is. He is what he is. So we have to do what we have to do to close ranks around a more desirable candidate, conservative candidate. It is what it is. This is the party. But rally around a more desirable conservative candidate who is not so flawed. And, pushing forward as the nominee. And so, it's a Saturday in politics. One other reason is because, the Republicans no one seems to have, the guts to come outright and say it. Even if the former president doesn't respect it. Even if he starts to go off on a tirade of name calling and belittling. Because we know that's his MO. But what does one do for love of country? Who takes the hit here? Who takes one for the team? Who takes one for the country? For crying out loud. Because that's the time we're in now. That's the time we're in. This is no time to applaud, to rejoice, and be glad. Here we have the highest office in the land that's symbolic of the free will, and we have it tarnished. Even though the former president is no longer in office, he's tarnished the office. And for all of us red-blooded Americans who love freedom, we have to be careful with this. Because we have autocracies all around the world who want to point the finger and say, see, look, I told you America wasn't legitimate like that. I told you they're saying one thing and doing another. And that's what's going to happen. Faith in democracy is going to erode. In these Saturdays in politics that we're in, the faith in democracy is going to erode. Not just here at home, but abroad also. If we don't stand up to this constitutional menace and do the right thing. Now, it remains to be seen going forward who is going to be the nominee. But trust and believe. Take it from our fact founders here at Soluble. The former president right now in this moment, and we don't know what's going to happen 30, 60 days from now, 6 months from now. But right now in this moment, as we sit here, the former president is the leading candidate. He's the lead dog in the race for the Republican nomination for president of the United States. So, we have to stay focused. It's a sad time that the president has took the country through so much. He's undermining so many of our institutions. He can't be trusted. The fact checkers, they had a hard time keeping up when he was in office. Separating fact from fiction, the lie from the truth. And we're still stuck in this? No, we're not. We're not. Only if we allow ourselves to be. Now, lest we forget, here again at Soluble, we love to remind you that we see what the lack of a vote and minority rule looks like in the former president. This is what happened when you don't get out to vote. And we know a lot of people did. A lot of people want to give the president, the benefit of the doubt. Oh, he's a businessman. He knows about business. He could turn America around. That's ancient history now. We have to look at it for what it is. We have to look at it for what it is. If the president is not as rich as he states, we have to look at it for what it is. If his taxes reveal that he's taken tremendous losses, if his taxes reveal that his losses outweigh his gains, we have to look at it for what it is. We have to look at it for what it is and move forward. Now, one way and the only way that these Saturdays in politics can continue is, if we sit on the sidelines, if we bury our heads in the sand and don't play the long game. We'll be on the right side of history, doing, a big service to America to put Democrats in office. Then we're not stuck on, things like women's rights, legislation that, attacks semi-automatic weapons in the hands of American citizens. We see the people of Tennessee demonstrating today. They want it. America needs it. And so we need to do whatever it takes to keep that momentum going. We're not going to go too much more longer tonight. We know there's a big game coming on, a big college game, that honestly we're interested in here also at Soluble. So we're not going to go too much more longer. But, that's where we're at, ladies and gentlemen. That's where we're at. Now we can take these Saturdays that we're in now in politics and learn from them. Or, we cannot get on the right side of history and begin to allow things to further erode as far as political discourse. And, we eat ourselves from within. What do we do, about legislation when it comes to an assault weapons ban? We have to play the long game. We have to get a few more Republicans out and a few more Democrats in. And when that happens, believe it or not, some of the Republicans that remain are going to cross the aisles. They're going to cross the aisles. And so what they're doing right now with the assault weapons ban, for instance, while we're losing precious lives, precious little angels, precious boys and girls, while we're losing them, they're sitting on their hands and they're taking this wait and see approach, which in itself should be an outrage because we're losing precious lives while they're doing this. But best believe if we get a few more Republicans out and get more Democrats in, then they will start to go with the tide that's flowing that way. But right now, even though lives are being lost and cold and cruel as it is, that's what they're doing. They're wanting to see, does the base feel different? Or is this just outside noise, or is this, really the base feeling different? And, if there's one thing that we should be able to cross the aisles on, as far as Democrats and Republicans, is legislation geared towards assault weapons that, are being carried around every day by everyday citizens. There's no assault weapons ban on the book. And, so we have assault weapons in society. There are no foreign invaders. So therefore, we're killing ourselves. We're killing our most valuable, which is our children. So You know, these are Saturdays in politics when we have a former sitting president who is being indicted with no shame, with no guilt. How do we stop it? You know, how do we change the status quo here? What is the answer if we don't play the long game in politics and get more Democrats in and more Republicans out? Then where do we go with the assault weapons ban? And that's where, you know, here at Soluble, we constantly put it out there that the majority rules. If the majority of us stand up, the assault weapon in everyday American society will go away. It will go away. And, you know, at the same time, too, without digressing too much, you know, this starts at home. This starts at home because a lot of these kids who are going into the schools with assault weapons are just like the kids that they're targeting. They're kids themselves. But, you know, back to the assault weapons ban. We're going to have to vote it out of American society. That's the right thing to do. Vote it out. No matter how, you know, how loud Republican politicians or Republican voters shout. What purpose does it serve in society as far as protection or deterrent? What purpose? So, you know, once again, as always, in an American democracy, in a system where, you know, we live and die by the vote, we thrive or, you know, we decline by the vote. Everything is determined by the vote. The laws that are passed, our ways of life, new laws possibly for the books, is determined by the vote. That's the system that we live in. That's what we here at Soluble propose to take on. You know, there's a lot of, you know, podcasts out there, and God bless them when it comes to sports. You know, when it comes to Hollywood, when it comes to you know, just everyday gossip. And as I said, God bless them. But here at Soluble Opposition, our goal is to bring as much political fact to the forefront, to take the confusion away as to why. For instance, why are we in a Saturdays in politics where we have a former leader for the first time in the history of the country facing indictment? When, you know, we've been taught since preschool that the president is one who loves his country. A president loves his country. He defends his country. He protects his country. He's somebody who serves with honor and integrity. Now what? Now what? Is it different now? Has it changed? It remains to be seen. It remains to be seen. But these Saturdays are, you know, they're not something that America is stuck with. By no means. They're not something that America is stuck with. But we all have to wear, you know, egg on our face now because of the actions of the former president, believe it or not. This is nothing to cheer. This is a smear, not just on the Oval Office, but the whole country, the whole freedom loving country. This is a sad day. This is a sad day. This is a possible day where flags should be flown at half staff. And so from now until the next election cycle, you have to stay focused. You have to stay ready because where else in the world can you go and, you know, live under this kind of governance where it's the people who make up where, when, and how the government flows. It's the people. But if the people don't vote, then, you know, democracy goes down. Democracy doesn't, you know, strengthen itself. It doesn't continue to sharpen itself. It gets dull. It's not that shiny object that all cherish to be a part of. So, democracy works with the vote, and democracy is, definitely what's on the line in these Saturdays in politics, because, we have Republicans who, for love of one's country, can do the right thing here. Now it's name calling. This is a Soros backed investigation. This is a George Soros backed investigation. Where are the Republicans going here? Nothing can be further than the truth. And if, for all of us who love America, who love freedom, who love democracy, and we know that when it comes to the rule of law, no one's above the law. If it is a George Soros backed investigation, we should be thankful for George Soros. If no one's above the law. If no one's above the law. And it's these are the Saturdays. We stated it before on this podcast. For those of you who are old enough to remember Leave It to Beaver, this is what it's like when Eddie Haskell was in the White House. And if you know the show, you knew that, Eddie was a jerk. He was just, the worst of the worst when it comes to his actions. When the parents weren't around, when the parents weren't looking. And here's what we have. This is what it's like to make Eddie Haskell president of the United States. This is a Macaulay Culkin, the good son. Here we are. Life imitating art in the highest office in the land. And the Republicans, they see it and they run for cover. They stick their heads in the sand. All of a sudden, they can't speak truth to power to protect the Republic from one of their own. And going forward, we're going to have to take a long look at that. You have Republican candidates who are aspiring in the near future to be president of the United States of America. But they can't stand up against one of their own in defense of the Republic. We as Democrats, we shouldn't love the country so much that, we're willing to do anything other than make the case to our voters to win them over. That's what we should do in a democracy. Let the debate chips fall where they may and win over the American voter. That's as far as we should go for love of country. This is not something that, you attack your own country in a domestic way in order to have your way, in order to be head of government. Excuse me. So it remains to be seen, if lies are going to prevail or whether the truth is going to prevail. The Saturdays in politics, this is what is upon us. We have a former president who is being indicted. And truly, indeed, it's a stain on democracy, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, whether you love the former president or whether you hate it. It's a stain that all of us as Americans have to wear. Because, we're all part of this country of freedom, love, and democracy. And the president has violated it so blatantly and tarnished the office. And, officials are forced to act now. They're forced to act. It's just too much there. It's just too much there. And, the president is like, the former president is like a child who doesn't get disciplined, who doesn't face no form of punishment, can just kick and scream until, he tires himself out. Well, we can't afford that in this democracy. Because, there seems to be no low. The former president doesn't seem to feel no way he's tired. He's all over the place. With classified documents, still pushing election lies, conspiracies. What is the deep state? What is the deep state? I mean, it sounds great, at a campaign rally. It sounds great. But can the former president come out and effectively explain what the deep state is and what it stands for? Now, we don't want this to be like, here a couple of weeks ago when I think this was MSNBC, where the journalist asked the guest speaker what to define woke and what did woke actually mean. And she stuttered, she stammered. She had trouble, exactly defining for the American people what woke was and or is. And there you have it. There you have it. It's a great bite. It's something great to, make up and stoke fear and instill fear in the American people and run off of it. But what's really there? What's really there? By all accounts, this guest speaker on MSNBC who so strongly opposed woke and spoke out in such strong terms in opposition to woke couldn't even tell you what woke is or was. And so that's where we're at. That's where we're at in this Saturday of politics. We're going to continue to strive to be eye-opening, to make the American people aware of why it's so important to get out on election day in each and every election cycle and play the long game here. We're going to look back to the last two Republican administrations, two Republican presidents. And, to be fair about it, we'll look back at the last two Democratic presidents. There's no biases here. The only goal we have is to solve. And so, moving forward, to get back to the country that we know we can be, where, we can reinstill faith in our institutions, in our elections. To get back to that place, we have to vote some in and vote some out. We have to vote some in and vote some out. I mean, because, we don't know from a Reagan Republican to now, we hear it soluble. We don't understand it. We don't know what's happening. But we know that, we had to come on air and speak up. Because from, a Reagan Republican to now, to a MAGA right, this is something that, is morphing into something that's so un-American. And we felt compelled to speak up. So we're going to close on that note, a Saturday in politics. Saturdays, and we hope that we can get this over expeditiously as possible. But, there's so many cases coming at the former president. If he loved the country, he would really get out the way. He would really get out the way for the sake of what's best for the country. The majority has spoken, and the president doesn't want it to be so. In his eyes, the majority is a lie. It's a rigged majority, and nothing can be further than the truth. So, our goal here is to keep you informed, keep you above the political noise that means nothing, and is designed for nothing but to confuse you or wear you down, and make the idea of voting seem like something that's so out of style or unnecessary or a waste of time. Here at Soluble, we beg to differ. So that's going to do it tonight for our podcast of Saturdays in Politics. And these are Saturdays because it affects all of us. As I said in closing, no time for cheering, no time for rejoicing or hand clapping. This is a sad day for democracy starting tomorrow. So it remains to see where the chips are going to fall. But our goal here at Soluble is to keep you informed and keep you in tune with all political happenings so that when it comes time for the next election cycle, you can make an informed. So until, we speak again, this is Soluble signing off, saying thank you for joining us. Good night and God bless. Thank you.